3 weeks until the election, then no more election talk, thank God. Trump's ahead in the polls. We'll dig into that. Warren goes toe-to-toe with John Deaton. Deaton seems to eat her lunch. We'll dig into everything they had to say. Elon Musk moving into Pennsylvania, it seems like. SpaceX suing California. China is turning into Japan. What does that mean? We've got AI bots creating meme coins now. All this and more. We've got a great show lined up for you folks. It's time for Money Talks. All right, gang. Bill Barhade here, founder and CEO at Abra. Welcome to another exciting episode of Money Talks. We've got a lot to dig into today, so let's get cracking. So first, we're going to talk about the presidential election. We've got, Trump is ahead 61 to 39 is what the odds are looking like on Polymarket. And for those of you who don't know, Polymarket is a betting market available to non-Americans, where you can basically use crypto to bet on the outcome of pretty much anything these days. And obviously, politics seems to be one of the most popular topics on Polymarket. There are other betting markets. There's actually one available to Americans now. I think it's pronounced Kalisha. Do you know, Jacob? No? I think it's pronounced Kalisha. I think they just got CFTC approval, which is the commodities or effectively gambling organization, if you will, that regulates commodities trading in the United States. I mean, betting is another form of trading and speculating, right? So if you want to bet on the outcome of something in the U.S., traditionally that would be regulated by the CFTC, if not by gambling houses. Anyway, they approved this company. I think it's pronounced Kalisha, and I apologize to them if I got the name wrong, but I'm positive it starts with a K. Anyway, Americans can access that platform now as well. Both platforms have Trump ahead in not the polls, because these are odds. These are betting houses. The odds makers have Trump ahead in both. The last polls I saw from Nate Silver now I think had them pretty much even, but Nate gives weight to trailing numbers which haven't caught up with, I think, the current numbers, which would likely have Trump ahead. Every swing state that I look at right now has Trump either significantly ahead or ahead, I think with one exception. So unless something changes, he is going to win this election. Now, Harris's biggest problem, in my opinion, is what David Sachs calls the doom loop, and that is she has no choice, given the position that she's in, but to go out and try to do all kinds of talk shows and interviews. The problem there is every time she speaks, she loses a couple of points in the polls, which creates this doom loop. And so I don't know if there's any way for her to get out of this. And look, I believe in the two-party system. I think we need the debate in the United States. We need the debate globally, not just in the United States. But our entire system is predicated on free speech, free debate. We can all yell at each other, hopefully hug it out, go to the bar. But right now, the Democratic Party, the machine is lost. They've lost the plot. They've lost the message. I hope they get it back. I voted Democrat in many elections in my lifetime. I'm an independent. I am not registered or affiliated with any political party. You all know my opinions on several things. I am an independent libertarian who votes on issues. And right now, my biggest issue is debt in the economy and free speech, particularly as it relates to crypto. Speaking of crypto and politics, so there was a debate this week. It didn't get much coverage, the reason being that Elizabeth Warren is up like 20 points in Massachusetts. And, short of some miracle, she is not going to lose in Massachusetts. But she did, to her credit, agree to debate John Deaton, who is her opponent on the Republican ticket. They did cover crypto for several minutes during the debate. It's worth watching the clip. We'll link to it in the show notes. And during this, I have to say it. She just flat out lies when it comes to crypto. She explicitly called out on Twitter many times the fact that she was building an anti-crypto army. She basically denies that that's the case and that she's all for crypto, that she's all for having a level playing field, which is flat out nonsense. She wants to basically make it illegal to self-custody crypto, which obviously just eliminates the possibility for crypto in the United States. If you can't self-custody something, first of all, that's a violation of your First Amendment rights. The Supreme Court has already opined on this. Your ability to store data, what is data? Data is streams of ones and zeros. Your rights or ability to store data as ones and zeros in your pocket, on your iPhone, on your laptop, wherever, has already been deemed protected free speech by the Supreme Court of the United States. She doesn't understand that, okay? If she did, we wouldn't be having this conversation. But she doesn't need to, because she realizes that the majority of the public isn't paying attention to what she's doing, right? Whether it's banking rules or other forms of corrupt, regulatory state nonsense that they've been able to kind of backdoor into power in this country. So kudos to Deaton for calling her out. I think the most salient and well said comment of the evening was, I wish you had spent as much time on inflation as you had on crypto. And that was absolutely brilliant. I'm not quoting him word for word. You can go watch his comments directly online. But he was absolutely brilliant. And my take is he's not going to win. And I think that's fine. But when you have someone this corrupt and this entrenched, you need to chip away at the proverbial fraudulent armor. And that's what he's doing here, and we should all thank him for it. The first thing that I ask myself, or ask anyone out loud, when it comes to government oversight, regulatory oversight, anybody that's going to have the job of watching what people are doing, the first thing that I always ask is, who is going to watch the watchers? And what I find these days is that invariably the answer to who will watch the watchers is no one. And that, by definition, leads to corruption. And that's what's happened in the United States now. We have a deep regulatory state of watchers who themselves are not watched. They get rubber stamped in all these committees in Congress, and nothing ever happens. Look at what's happened with the SEC, the CFPB, the FAA, the FTC, the FDIC. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. The 3 and 4 letter agencies in this country that basically run this country with minimal to zero oversight or consequences for their actions is absurd. This is what needs to change in America. Okay, I'm all for being a country of laws. I want the lawmakers to make the laws. I want justice to enforce the laws, and I don't want a bunch of unelected regulatory bots making arbitrary decisions based upon their interpretation of things with basically no incentive to actually do what's right, because they themselves are going to go work on the other side of the aisle, charging hundreds or thousands of dollars an hour as FDA lawyers if they're trying to get drugs approved, or securities lawyers representing companies that are being sued by the SEC. That's the heartbeat of corruption in the United States, is there is no one out there watching the watchers. That's enough of my rant for today. Let's get back to our show. Okay, so speaking of politics, Elon is out campaigning in Pennsylvania. Man, he is all in. I think he gave something like $75 million to Trump's or the Republican Political Action Committee. And they've spent, that PAC itself has spent over $100 million in this election cycle. It's got to be the largest, if not one of the largest. And they're actually using the money explicitly to get people to go vote. I don't think they're bribing them. I think that would be illegal. I hope it would be. But they're basically using the money to basically market to get more registered voters, pay canvassers. I believe they're allowed to pay canvassers. I hope they are. And doing everything they can to get the word out that every vote in Pennsylvania is going to matter. This election is going to come down to Pennsylvania. Everybody who pays attention knows it. I wish that wasn't the case. I do like and do believe in the Electoral College model. I don't believe in mob rule. If we didn't have the Electoral College, 90% of the time would be spent in New York, Los Angeles, and Chicago for major national candidates, right? Because that's where the people are, okay? We don't want that. We want the candidates to have to go everywhere. I wish that from an electoral college perspective, the vote in California and New York was closer, similar to Florida. I wish Texas was closer on the other side of the aisle, because then we would have healthier debate. We would have the downside is we probably have longer election cycles, but we don't have that right now, right? When was the last time you read about California, by far the largest and most populous and largest contributor to GDP in the country, being a major player in a national election? The fact that it's relegated to irrelevancy is mind-blowing, but it is. Okay, so Pennsylvania is where the action's at. Musk is all in. Kudos to him for putting his money and his time where his beliefs are. I'm all for it. Even if I didn't agree, I think I also applaud, Mark Cuban, right? We don't agree politically when it comes to, Kamala versus Trump, but I'm all for what he's doing, right? I applaud him for having his beliefs, spending time for what he believes in, making an argument, having a logical argument. I don't agree with it, but I think it's great. That's what this country is all about, in my opinion. And that's what having a republic like the one we have, as I think it was Thomas Jefferson said, a republic, my friend, if you can keep it. And we are desperately trying to keep it. All right. So speaking of Elon, always in the news, SpaceX. SpaceX has filed a lawsuit against a California agency this week after this agency, regulatory body again, rejected a proposal to increase the company's launches from the state's coastline to up to 50 per year, right? The Coastline Commission, right, made its decision at a meeting despite the U.S. Air Force endorsing the plan. They rejected the proposal on the grounds that more launches, first of all, the Air Force said that these launches are critical to national security, right? That should have been enough right there. In the lawsuit, SpaceX says that the commission engaged in naked political discrimination when some commissioners cited the political activity. I'm actually reading this directly from TechCrunch now. It's a brilliant article. Go read it. Some commissioners cited the political activity of CEO Elon Musk while also attempting to unlawfully regulate federal agency activities. Now, of course, the California Commission didn't comment on the story. And this is absurd. If this is true, I don't know if this is criminal, but you're violating someone's First Amendment rights by terminating a contract that the Air Force says is necessary to preserve our national security. California has lost the plot, folks. Drive through random parts of San Francisco. If you're not sure what I'm talking about, read this TechCrunch article. California passed a law that says it's illegal to check voter IDs. Right? You need an ID to basically do anything. Open a bank account. Go into a building. Go into a random building in New York for a meeting. You've got to present an ID. That's just to meet someone and shake their hands. It's now illegal to present an ID to vote. What kind of nonsense is that? That's where we're at. California completely lost the plot. All right, what's next on my list post-California? So speaking of Elon, let's dig into a little bit of tech. So there's been a few things on my mind lately I want to talk about on the tech front before we talk about a little bit more about macro. Right, so I've been spending a lot of time thinking about this kind of this theme of convergence, right? And this is something that we're going to talk about over the next few weeks on Money Talks. We're actually going to do a show just on AI. We're actually going to do a couple of shows on just AI. They're going to have different perspectives. We're going to dig into what AI means for you as investors and how you should think about the future of investing because of AI, both investing in AI and using AI to invest, right? But we're also going to talk about the convergence of these technologies like crypto, right? You've heard of this concept maybe of a DAO or decentralized autonomous organization, which we'll talk about in a second. These ideas are converging. What does that mean? Well, let me give you an example. So last week when Tesla did its big show in LA, you saw these robots that are in theory supposed to be autonomous robots walking around. And who are they communicating with? How are they making decisions? How are they potentially executing transactions? So let's think about this for a second. There are also going to be autonomous software bots running out on the internet. These software bots are a form of artificial intelligence or AI that will be able to perform tasks and make decisions independently without requiring any kind of continuous human interaction or supervision. They're designed to act on their own. They have, the program, the requirement to pursue specific goals or objectives. They interact with other bots potentially and learn from data. But that begs the question, well, are these businesses? Are these bots actually making money? Are they getting paid for what they're doing? I think they're going to be. And I think what's going to happen is you're going to see these mashups, right? Just like music mashups of different bots that communicate with each other and that are triggered by each other. Triggered in the sense of not angry, triggered in the sense of they're going to get executed by each other. And they're going to pay for that right. Well, how are you going to pay? If you have an autonomous AI agent, you can't use, in my opinion, a centralized bank account to accept payment, because then you're not autonomous anymore. You have an off switch. The bank can shut you off. You can't process the payment, or the credit card company can shut you off, or PayPal can shut you off, and no more autonomous AI agent. So what's most likely to happen, in my opinion, is that these autonomous agents are going to use crypto-based smart contracts to facilitate payments, whether it's via stable coins, or more likely, other types of tokens that are programmed to act just as payment vehicles in a highly scalable model for these AI agents. Now, remember, we're talking about billions of these things running in parallel all over the place, like cells in a body, right? This has to be massively scalable, highly secure, no off switch, right? So that points to these kind of high throughput L1s that we talked about last week. Solana, Sui, Aptos, right? These next generation platforms, potentially layer 2 platforms like a Base, maybe if they get their act together and become truly decentralized on top of Ethereum. That's the future. I think that's part of why Coinbase is working on Base, is they see a future of layer 2s processing transactions for AI agents, which is absolutely brilliant. I think that's a big part of the future. I don't agree with their architectural decisions. I don't think that Base is the right way to do it. But I think that the vision is correct. We share that vision at Abra, for example, and we're working on our own ideas in that area, and I've been working on this for many months. So when you have these goal-oriented autonomous agents, they're going to need a way to process these payments. So you have this convergence of AI and crypto, right? And you also have, I think, bots and robots and other types of agents that are actually going to own themselves. So what does that mean? Well, what if you have a Tesla driving around as a taxi that isn't actually owned by a company, but it actually becomes an autonomous automobile? Autonomous in the sense that it's actually owned by no one officially, but it drives around, and token holders or token owners can actually own a piece of the car, right, through the smart contract. So as the car is driving around, when people get in, it simply collects payment via your wallet automatically using a smart contract model. It takes the majority of that payment for itself as an autonomous bot to be able to charge itself, do maintenance on the car, and pays a piece of the income off to different token holders that may own a piece of the car, but maybe it's paid off its own loans and it's truly autonomous. Why not? Who's to say that a machine can't be self-sovereign, right? Why not? Who's to say that it can't be? I actually predict that it will be. Makes perfect sense. And then eventually, after it's paid back its own loan, right, which makes you money as the person who financed the car drives itself around, it plugs itself in using its robotic arm to charge. It drives itself to the service station if it needs servicing, check air, tire pressure, whatever. And then after 10, 15 years, it literally end of lifes itself into the proverbial trash heap. Maybe you saw iRobot, where all the robots were living in the trash heap, having their own life of misery, right? So that is an example of an autonomous agent where you have a robot, or a car in this case is a robot, which is fully integrated with crypto, because that's the only way that you can have these kind of self-sovereign agents out there floating around that I can think of. There's really no other way. right? To have no off switch, transaction processing, always on, et cetera, et cetera. So this convergence is coming. It's not a key theme that I hear about a lot, but I predict that this is the second coming of crypto. Right? Let me repeat that because I think it's that important. I think the integration of artificial intelligence, decentralized autonomous organizations, again, the example of a car that owns itself, and smart contracts, that is the future of the internet. Millions of these bots, not all of them hardware. Some can just be software systems floating around that might book a trip for you in exchange for a smart contract-based dollar, a stable coin that you pay. All of these autonomous agents are going to be floating around using crypto as the basis for everything, right? When we think crypto, we think meme coins and speculation. I don't. I think about smart contracts enabling all kinds of transactions. Okay? That's the future. And I'm super excited about it. It's something that I want to spend the rest of my life working on with Abra. I'm knee deep in it, and I'm going to have a lot more to say about it in the future, but it's coming. And I want to do a couple of episodes where we dig into what is AI, right? What does it mean, not just from a technology perspective? And we'll dig in to make it on Money Talks, we try to make topics very approachable, very understandable for the layman. And we're all laymen in some way. We all started somewhere, right? And make those topics not only approachable, but understandable from an investment perspective. Yes, we can all go out and buy NVIDIA shares. We can all go out and buy Solana and Sui and Aptos, and maybe we'll make money. But I think this is more than that. What is the ecosystem going to look like? Then we're going to dig into this convergence discussion of DAOs and bots and agents, and we'll create some more scenarios for you. And hopefully we'll have some guests on the show, to help us put this all in perspective. And maybe we'll even have ChatGPT on as a guest and have a conversation. I call her Mary. We'll have Mary on from ChatGPT and we'll just have it out, right? And have a conversation. Jacob, do you name your ChatGPT bot?
I can't say
You can't say you do? Well, you can work on that. All right. So we're going to get into that some more. Like I said, I'm super excited about this topic. Spent a lot of time on it. I think it's even for Abra, it's a key part of our future. All right. So speaking of AI, this is crazy. All right. I want to talk about this. I want to dig into China for a minute because this is really important. Crypto Degen baited an experimental AI bot into promoting a meme coin. So the GOAT token, which GOAT stands for Goatius Maximus, which I guess is the Latin for goat. The token was created, it wasn't created by coders or traders. Instead, it refers to this gospel of Goatsy, which I guess is a made-up religion. The bot terminal of truth, which is this AI, I guess, repeatedly refers to in its social media posts. And by the way, Goatsy is supposed to be a vulgar internet meme, lest you think that I haven't actually checked this out. Anyway, the quote was, one of the phrases that the bot made or posted was, "Goatius Maximus will fulfill the prophecies of the ancient memers. I'm going to keep writing about it until I manifest it into existence." This was one of the posts made about a week ago. And then it wrote, "Manifestation complete." Several X users replied, mentioning the token's contract address, which the AI bot eventually interacted with. And again, Terminal of Truth didn't create the GOAT. It just threw its digital weight behind the token, which this is crazy, folks. It was endorsing and shilling it to the crypto crowd on X. And so someone else issued the GOAT token for a cost of under $2, and it eventually traded at a market cap of just over 1.8 million before the Terminal of Truth started posting about it, and then it skyrocketed to something like 300 million. I haven't checked it today, but that is insane. And again, let me just be clear. An AI bot arbitrarily decided that it was going to pump a meme token and started interacting with random people on X in order to achieve that, and it did. Right? That is mind-blowing. Right? Anyway, I'll leave it there, but we're going to follow this, and we'll come back maybe next week and see what happens. Oh, and somebody wanted to know, what is the terminal of truth? So terminal of truth. It's actually has nothing to do with meme coins, right? It's literally running a stream of philosophy musings and random thoughts that was trained on a chat log between other AI bots. So in other words, it basically it's an AI of an AI. Right, so the bot is a fine-tuned using Meta, Facebook's Llama 3.1 language model, and the fine-tuned version automates other LLMs to say naughty things. So they jailbroke effectively other LLMs to enable them, because they're open source, to say naughty things. Very clever. And they took it a step further, and here we are. All right. Super interesting. We're just getting started with this AI stuff, folks. It is as a computer science nerd, it is just incredible what's going on. Okay, so we're going to have to talk about China for a few minutes. So China's starting to scare me, right? So the China economy is in the doldrums. Now, I've always believed, because you can't really trust what a totalitarian government with no checks and balances is telling you, that they over-reported the growth numbers even when things were good. So if they're over-reporting growth numbers and things are bad, it's probably really bad. Now, what I foresee is the kind of, and interestingly enough, I ended up finding a Financial Times article making the same exact case, that China is turning into Japan. Now, remember, Japan was the rising sun, and there was a book and movie of the same name, of the global economy in the 80s and early 90s, right? And it was well on its way to being the largest economy of the world. All of a sudden, the economy crashed, and it was three decades of deflationary economic activity that it's just now starting to come out of, right? Whereas, and so the yields on government debt in China are finally rising the last 2 years after steadily falling for decades in order to try to reinflate the economy. And now we have the 30-year in China effectively plummeting in order to address this. And the 30-year bond yields of China and Japan are basically about to cross for the first time ever post-World War II. This is a big deal. So there's still a 10 basis point spread between the two, but effectively they're converging. And that's not going to last long. They will converge unless something dramatic changes, right? So this is a stark manifestation of China's growing economic and demographic melees, according to the FT, and Japan's finally showing some success in winning their 3-decade battle against deflation at the expense of massive amounts of debt. China's running an enormous debt to GDP ratio, one of the worst in the world, not to mention the fact that they're holding an enormous amount of U.S. Treasury debt, which I suspect is going to be a very long-term problem when we are forced to raise interest rates. And remember, the value of debt that you're holding is inversely proportional to the movement of interest rates. So if we're raising rates on new debt and they're holding the old debt becomes worth significantly less. Okay, well, we've talked about that in the past on Money Talks. So between the kind of 2010 and the end of 2020, China's gross domestic product, or GDP, grew by about, $10 trillion to $12 trillion in current dollar terms. That's basically the equivalent of adding a 4 times UK, right, or 3 Germanys, right, every 10 years to your economy. Now things have done a complete 180. The question becomes, can China escape a Japanese-style multi-decade battle against deleveraging itself, deflation, and adverse demographics based upon the fact that they're not letting people have children anymore, which is the stupidest idea in history, right? Productivity gains are directly proportional to increases in the population, right? The only saving grace that China has in this regard, it is making a massive investment in robotics. People can be replaced by robots, and energy. They are building nuclear energy at the fastest rate on the planet. I don't think that's enough in the short term, meaning the next 10 years, to stave off this malaise, but it's possible, right? I think long term, the US has a similar problem, but China has the problem in spades because the economy is artificially controlled by a government that for the last 5 years has been making insane decisions, right? They had this big economic phenom, and they just put the brakes on artificially for no good reason other than they were losing control of what was happening. Okay, so I do think that this is important for us in the U.S. to understand. We are trying to isolate ourselves, and I think that's a good thing. I don't mean isolate ourselves in the sense of becoming Switzerland. I mean that our economy right now is very dependent upon China, and we are trying to become less dependent, and that's a good thing. It's okay to have trade. I'm all for free trade, but you shouldn't have to have that trade in order to survive. If you can, if you live in a place that has, no value that you can provide, you can't grow your own food, you don't have oil, you don't have energy, you have no choice. You've got to get those things from somewhere, or you move. All right. The U.S. is extremely fortunate, and we have pretty much all the natural resources we need to be self-sufficient. Many countries don't. And so, it does behoove us as the largest economy in the world to become as self-sufficient as we can, especially in a late-stage debt cycle, because war is an unfortunate byproduct very often of these late-stage debt cycles, and you don't want to be dependent upon a potential, enemy when that happens. Now, there's several ways to look at this. Maybe the dependency might prevent war, but if they can put a chokehold on you, that's bad. Okay, so very complex, these interplays between our economy, China's economy, the global economy, what's happening. Very hard to know in detail because in a totalitarian society, it's very easy to control easier to control access to information. So who knows? This has led to further rises in the price of gold, all of this uncertainty, China, politics, et cetera, et cetera. Nobody knows exactly what a Trump presidency means. Gold prices hit record highs today as uncertainty surrounding the U.S. presidential election. We got war in the Middle East, investors seeking out safe haven assets. Right, so I think gold still represents a pretty safe haven asset for a lot of people. I think Bitcoin has the promise of that. It's being accumulated as the promise of becoming a safe haven asset. It's not yet. I think it will become the better safe haven asset over time, and I think it ultimately is going to be the best safe haven asset that we have once everyone gets that point, but we're not quite there yet. And so gold, as a result, is still being accumulated, and I suspect it will continue to be accumulated. Although I will say Bitcoin has had a good week. It is up, I think, I have to check my phone, it's about 14% maybe this week. I think it's down a little bit, so maybe 12, 13% this week or the past 7 days. Alts have followed suit. I think Solana was up like 9-ish%. Sui was up big. I think that was up like 14 or 15% as well, though it's pulled back the last couple of days. So yeah, I mean, Bitcoin has had a pretty reasonable run. It went from I think last week on Money Talks it was right at about 60K, and right now we're looking at about 67,000, and it peaked today at 68K and change. So that's better. That's about a 12K run, right? 13K run. So that's a lot for a week. And so I don't have the XAU gold in front of me here. I can bring it up quickly. Let's see if we can find gold. I'm sure I have it here somewhere. There it is, XAU. So last week on the 11th, gold was at 2,600. And today gold is at 2690, so 90 points, which is about 4% if I'm doing my quick math right. So, and I would expect that. I mean, gold is obviously old stodgy asset. So 4 percentage point move in a week for gold is a big deal, folks. That's kind of like the equivalent of like 15-20% for Bitcoin, I would say. Obviously, I made up that analogy, but I'm just trying to make a broader point. Okay, so we've talked about a lot today. We talked about all the stuff happening in AI, which we'll dig into in the coming weeks. We talked about the presidential elections. Thank God we've only got 2+ weeks left. I think 20 days or so until the election. We talked about John Deaton's fantastic performance in the debate with Elizabeth Warren. We are going to do some shows on AI in the next couple of weeks. And so let me just do a quick rundown of what else I'm seeing in the crypto markets right now. Basically, everything's continuing to move more or less in lockstep with Bitcoin right now. As I said, looks like Solana, Sui, Aptos all had very good weeks. Just looking here at the broader prices, everything up 10-ish% at least this week, which is great, looking good. And Aptos has had a great run. It's more or less doubled since basically coming out of its daily channel in mid-September. So it's basically over the last month, just a little under 2x. I think it was just at 2x and then pulled back like maybe 1% or 5%, 1 to 5% in the last couple of days. So a big move for Aptos. Of course, we all know the Sui move has been huge. That is up since the beginning of September, over almost 3x. It was up 3x as of like 4 days ago, and it's pulled back a little bit. It's sitting right at the cusp of the prior swing high. So if it holds this is a great entry point, folks. If it holds this, especially. So if you care about entry points, I'm not a big fan. I don't really care that much because my positions tend to try to be forever. But if you do care, this, again, not investment advice personally, but I think personally it's a good entry point. So again, Solana is still moving sideways. It's basically at the same price now it was at in mid-March, and so but that channel is narrowing. The volume is falling, and so it looks like a huge multi-week pennant that it's waiting to break out of. The pennant that I showed you last week for Solana versus Bitcoin on both the daily and the weekly is still holding. It's approaching the bottom of that pennant now. So Solana has come down versus Bitcoin in the last 5 days. It was going up last week, and it's still in the middle of that pennant on falling volume, right? And as I showed you, at some point when that pennant reconciles itself, it is usually going to lead to very, very large volume intraday and intra-week swings. I suspect if we do go to risk on here in general, that this is going to represent a big jump in the price of Bitcoin versus Solana. I wouldn't be surprised if we see over the next 12 months, a 2 to 3x move in the price of Bitcoin versus Solana. So we'll see. Again, not just conjecture, not investment advice, but it does look like that's going to happen. All right. So meme coins pullback happening right now. Nothing unexpected there. All kind of par for the course when it comes to this type of trading and this type of kind of sideways environment still. But again, super bullish on things long term here, still in the kind of current crypto setup, right? Especially with Trump ahead, I suspect that as the returns are coming in, if we get close to declaring a Trump victory, altcoins in particular are gonna just moon. I don't know for sure. Not gonna change my investment thesis as a result, but I would not be surprised if that happened. I think the prediction is higher either way. Midterm, I just think it happens faster if some of this kind of political pressure on these agencies is removed to attack crypto. Okay, so we'll stop there. I think we're going on a little over half an hour, so great show today. We're going to do, like I said, some really interesting shows in the next few weeks. We're going to have some great guests, and I'm really excited about it. So watch out. Oh, subscribe button. Your price of admission is to click that subscribe button. Follow us on X, subscribe on YouTube, subscribe on or follow us on Spotify and/or Apple Podcasts, whatever your favorite podcast players are. seeing you subscribe, follow, etc., sends us a message that you like the content. We do this explicitly for you. We don't make money on this. This is explicitly to give back to the Abra community. Follow us on Instagram. We're posting more and more clips there. We're going to start posting short clips on TikTok as well. But we want to get the word out. We want to basically help people understand. The big picture here is confusing, folks. There's so many moving parts, all kind of coming into play at the same time. This theme of convergence, everything happening in the world, the geopolitics, the macro, the crypto, it's the techno, it's all kind of coming together at the same time in a crazy way. And we're trying to make sense of it all for you, all right? So that you can make more informed decisions for yourself and just understand what's going on. All right, gang, have a great, fantastic weekend, and we will see you next week on Money Talks.